Welcome to today's podcast episode. Welcome our guest, Carsten Bovenkamp. Christian is Global Vice President, Human Resources at Integra LifeSciences and is with us from Zurich, Switzerland today.
Thank you, Carsten, for the introduction.
Thank you for being here, for being so flexible. Christian, can you give us a bit of your background in your impressive career?
Absolutely fine. Look, it's not for me to judge if it's impressive. It's for all the kind of listeners actually to judge on that angle. I have to admit that I had the pleasure to live and work so far in 10 countries on 4 continents throughout my youth, as well as throughout my business career. After I had stopped school, I hold a diploma, an MBA in business administration, but also I'm a black belt in Six Sigma and do have finalized education in systemic consulting. I worked in the consultancy business for the IT world, process reengineering and change management as the first step within my CV. And then I moved from the external to the internal consultants business and had to sell a large chunk of Daimler Chrysler over to the French-Canadian aircraft and rolling stock company Bombardier. And I moved with them over there in terms of heading up their Center of Excellence for Leadership Development, talent management, talent acquisition, all sorts of things. I then also had the pleasure to work for the HR business partner side of the equation there on a global scale before I moved into the automotive industry in their financial sector and had to sell off their business or to close it completely down. That's why I lived in the UK. And from there on, I only spent the last 14 years in life sciences. And in all fairness, this is a true pleasure in terms of making meaningful impact to patients' lives and to hospital costs and to everything else. And I always ran from a US-based headquarter perspective, their more international HR communication public relations side. And therefore, I spent time in the cardiovascular field, endovascular field, diabetic, tissue technologies, and also the orthopedics field. And now have been in the absolute true pleasure for heading up the HR side for the international business, but also for global operations, quality, supply chain, and procurement at Integra. And that's a bit to my background.
Thank you so much. Wow. And what has been your favorite place where you have worked so far? Worked or lived? I mean, more than 10 countries, that's amazing.
In all fairness, that depends on the age that I actually had. When you are younger, there's not a better spot than living in Rio de Janeiro. Absolutely, yes. I wouldn't really move there with children and at a certain kind of age that I'm currently at. And therefore, the true kind of absolute outstanding spot that I had the pleasure to live in and I would love to live back in is actually Paris.
Paris.
I went to school outside of Paris. I do have my, in brackets, French mother who resides there that I know for over 35 years. She was one of the managing directors of my father, and we have a very close contact, and I just love the vibe.
Okay. Wow. I think during the Olympics a couple of weeks ago, all of us could, smell the spirit a little bit of what a magnificent city that is. Yeah.
They have been promoting their city perfectly well. And we all know of certain prejudice. Oh my God, the Parisians are not French. They're a little bit more arrogant. Not really. If you get to know them in their own kind of language, oh, they're absolutely great.
Yeah. I'm with you here. Christian, what is also very interesting about you is that you're also an entrepreneur. You have an entrepreneurial background. Could you also give us a little bit of, insights into that side of your career and how that is also impacting your career? Because I think that's rather unusual for someone, working in HR in the corporate world.
I grew up as being the child of 2 entrepreneurs who had companies in their 4th or 3rd generation. that after my parents' passing actually was given over to my brother and to myself, as we have no engineering background, and those companies are the true engineering mechanic side of things. We both thought not to really enter the business, so we moved it into a holding structure, and we do now are sitting on the board in terms of taking care of that. But if you're sitting on the board there, you absolutely have to know the business, not as a every single moment being able to influence it, but you have to know it. And in all fairness, that really has given me the opportunity to look beyond a function like HR or communication in terms of making sure that as an HR business partner, the word of business and partnering in there is even more important than purely having the life cycle of HR. So I'm not saying that I just will follow every single kind of advice and wish that the business has, but I dare to be the voice of reason in terms of making sure that I do truly understand it. I go every quarter into our manufacturing sites and stand alongside the blue collars in producing from Monday till Friday in their shift. And that gives me right insight into what really goes on that manufacturing side. I spend multiple times every year with the sales staff going to customers. Not only gives me this one insight into what are they doing, and you can put it over to the recruitment world, the talent management side of things, or leadership development, but it also makes sure that okay, the French kind of salesperson in the neurology sector is linked with the Italian one. And the one has a problem, the other one definitely has a solution because a tumor is a tumor. So that's a little bit to how I consider that kind of entrepreneurial side of things that had influenced my kind of career.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting experience and angle of your background there. Don't you think that HR should, in general, be much more holistic than it is in many cases? Because many HR leaders I talk to, they are HR leaders, even though sometimes they would like to, be broader, have more responsibility, get a better overview, but it's not expected from them. Sometimes even they are held back. But I think, and you probably can support that it's very helpful for HR leaders to have the holistic view, to understand financials, to go to the shop floor, as someone recently told me, that's where the magic is happening. And not sitting in your silo. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And I would respond it in the following way. There were certain times that maybe HR was truly seen as a support function, as they actually are. They're supporting the business for the blue collars and for the salespeople to generate the revenues and the profits so that all the kind of headquarter functions will be actually financially impacted and positively be paid for that. Well, yeah. But if an HR person, even a leadership position, believes that only because purely of their title, they do have a seat at the decision table, that's wrong. If they don't have put their own HR side of things in order to produce the data necessary to make impactful business decisions, and just talk about their stomach feelings when you are confronted with engineers, mechanics, and physicians, well, that's not going to be happening in that kind of regards. You have to speak the business language, and therefore you need to be curious. You need to want to learn every single day, and only by proving that you're doing your own HR cycle correctly, you will get that decision table seat. It's not automatically. And I've had numerous exchanges in different companies that I worked for, but also with others, that they really looked at me like, are you someone from out of space? No. Well, I even had at a company a long time ago, the CHRO giving me the biggest compliment, even though I believe she meant it like the biggest kind of not compliment or insult. She told me, oh, you are so business focused. My God, I just don't get me wrong. You will just follow everything that business does. And I looked at her and said, look, maybe I have somebody misinterpreted my role profile as an HR business partner into the way that someone has to believe it. I will raise my voice if I do believe that the business has the right to put it forward, and I'm the voice of the business into the HR side, and you will have to hear that. Mm-hmm. So she looked at me and said, well, no, that's absolutely wrong. Oh, well, then I decided just to leave that company, because if the CHRO is not even believing in what is written on a piece of paper, that's wrong.
Right. Yeah, thank you so much for giving us that insight. I want to also go one step back. You said before that you had this itch of working abroad, working in different countries, different roles. I'm similar, so I know exactly how it feels, where it itches and how it itches. But can you explain a little bit what was really the driver to move around and to see? Yeah,
sure. My parents, well, actually, it was my mother, not my father, really, but my mother. Right? Well, look, there's always a good female behind a good male, so therefore it was my mother who took my brother and myself from country to country and was making sure that we were exposed to the world, not seeing our silo, more Germanic or North Rhine-Westphalian belief and thinking. And that somebody really made sure that from the beginning onward, I was instilled with their values. I didn't really have any kind of pocket money. My parents didn't give us pocket money, so we had to work for that. And if you would like to have friends in a new country that you move to, well, you have a certain approach. You come from your system, you come from your side of the culture. Well, that could be successful, but in all fairness, in some countries, that's not truly successful because their culture is very different. So therefore, making sure that my brain is instilled in learning what the culture and the country is all about and putting it in their words, that truly made friends that I even have today. And that is really what made me want to get educated in business administration on the international side of things. And from there on, I never really wanted to have a more German, because I'm German passport. So really a German role. Well, language-wise, I do cover 6 languages rather fluently.
Wow.
That people have told me. Well, if you have learned it at a young age, it comes rather natural. And therefore, I wanted to live with that. And when I could bring one thing to any company that is broad and wants to grow international, is the understanding that other countries have other culture, other thoughts, and you need to embrace that. Yeah. If I hear once more from a center of excellence in compensation and benefits, that person phoned me up a couple of years back, and she said, well, Christian, I saw the public holiday calendar overview that you had created with your team, country by country. Well, first of all, a compensation and benefits center of excellence lead for the compensation benefits should absolutely do that. It's not something that I should be doing. But in that review, I did it. She even dared to ask, well, could you tell me why Germany has a public holiday on the 1st of November or the 31st of October, or the Swiss do have it on the 1st of August? And I explained that to them, or to her. And said, yeah, and why didn't they go so horrible? Because we have it on the 14th of July. Wouldn't it be easier that all the countries would align their kind of national public holiday to the 14th of July? Well, I had to count till 21 before I responded back, and just dared to respond back. Well, it apparently happened on a different day. And yeah. Why would we, in those countries, align it with the 14th of July? Why are you not aligning your US public holiday with our European ones? And that's going to be rather difficult because we have them all differently, apart from Easter or Christmas or all the kind of religious type of holidays. And that put me into the respective kind of overview to believe that if you're a compensation and benefits center of excellence lead, you should not dare to ask your colleague on those points that you could theoretically Google on the internet.
Right. Yep. And I think this lack of we unfortunately we find that a lot, this lack of cultural sensitivity, and I don't even think this is sensitivity, this is common sense. Yeah. What happened to me? Yeah.
It's common sense in that regards, yes. Well, I don't know every single public holiday, let's say in Costa Rica or in Mexico, but I'll find ways in terms of how to get around that and just find out what it is.
Yeah, and what happened to me once, and actually I had a search mandate, and the CHRO, he was based here in Germany, but we were recruiting for a management position in the US. And it happens that the CHRO insisted of having an interview with our top candidate at 7 o'clock local time US on the 4th of July. Oh wonder, the candidate wasn't
Declined
the candidate.
Declined
it. Absolutely. So, yeah. And also no wonder the CHRO are not working together anymore, because it's just if these basics if these basics are missing, there's just no common ground, I think, for corporate work or for international work.
Look, if a company works truly global, like ours does, from Australia to Japan, China, Europe, Middle East, and towards the US and Americas kind of thing, well, sometimes at a certain town hall, one person needs to suffer either early in the morning or late in the afternoon. But then you rotate and you give the feeling to every continent or to every part of the time zone region that you're not better or worse than all the others, because the others are going to be suffering. And that will create truly, for me, a sense of belonging and an employee engagement. As I've been told from my Australian colleagues, I get up 5 o'clock in the morning, I have my calls with Asia Pacific because I want to be in their time zone. Yeah. And I never really stop working before 11 o'clock in the evening because I do my calls with the West Coast of the US. And that's fine for me. I love that, because I give them in their time zone, the normal time zone, my attendance. It's not that they need to give you the attendance, because you're just a support function. And I'm proud in saying that I'm a support function. I'm absolutely proud.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's a very important function, a very important support function. Yeah, and I think that the potential of HR very often isn't leveraged to its full extent. Yeah, in many corporations, even today.
Though there are HR people and there are HR people. So if a company has never really understood the value, or the C-suite level hasn't in their mind been somebody instilled with what HR could do, well, that's their fault. But if it takes one person to go into a company and to change that, it's culture change. It doesn't happen overnight, but it definitely will happen. And you just don't give up. You just don't give up.
Absolutely. And I hear it very often that HR leaders tell me, hey, we are not, respected from the CEO, or our view isn't taken into consideration as much as it should be. But there are other cases as well, especially in US companies, also stock listed companies. We see that very often. I had one company where a new CEO stepped in. It was also a medical device contract manufacturer, US based. And the first person he hired, or he brought into his new management team, was the CHRO. Because he said for him, this will be his wingman. He needs them. It's the most important role. And he was very much eager to get that. And it has proven successful. Yeah.
I am sure. And I see tendencies in the market these days, as we both have exchanged that. I will reveal this one. I'm looking for a new HR challenge. My company treated me extremely well. So I just anything against the company I currently work for. though there are companies out there who have truly understood that a new company who's building up forces or who is right-sizing outsourcing needs a strong, knowledgeable, data-driven HR person at their side in terms of putting this one into motion. I'm a strong believer that there's nothing more, in brackets, supportive to the CEO of a type of division than the finance person and the HR person. Yes, you need a lot of other kind of guys, but if those three are not speaking with one voice, that's rather sad.
Yeah, absolutely. And I fully agree. And also I see this triangle between the CFO, CEO, and HR person. Whereas I see the maybe I'm a little bit biased, but I see the CFO always kind of with the mirror. He should be the mirror. He's mirroring,
Yes,
what's happening in the company. He's showing
sure,
numbers, our
sure.
language, and yeah.
I give a specific example of a company I'm currently interviewing for, right? It's a spin-off of a decently large kind of medtech related kind of part. And they truly want to go to a 1 billion US dollar revenue from 300, 400 million US dollars, which is significant. Absolutely significant. Yes, their kind of part of the life science world is really up for that humongous growth. So the supposed to be new CEO of that offspin, he is someone who educated in biology / even in mechanical devices, which in my mind means that, oh, very data driven, which is absolutely fine and great. And he put forward to the executive recruiter, find me an HR person who speaks the business language and who is as data driven that I can really link with. And find me a finance person, apart from being data driven, has the true knowledge of human resources in terms of putting culture words forward. That's for me an absolute outstanding baseline of success on that angle. And he even put out there, well, I have a lot of more other positions like the chief operating officer, the chief manufacturing type of individual that could come in a second step. Those two I need to closely work with because our culture needs to change from a more technical driven perspective into a truly cultural change entrepreneurial mindset, because going to 1 billion in the next 2 years is absolutely meaning you need to be staffing up and you need to go into different kind of countries. And yes, for sure, production is production, sales is sales, absolutely fine. But if you just don't even have the legal entities established or the payroll being established or anything else being established or getting the people even in that kind of country that we have no brand and no name whatsoever, it's value creation for the candidates. And we want to treat whoever is applying for a certain role with the same dignity as you would be hiring that person at the end. Because if there is, let's say, one job posting XYZ on this and this kind of page, and you have 100 applications, you select one. You interview maybe 10, right? But over the 90s, if you just don't get back to them with a truly meant and heartfelt talk, instead of writing a pure email after 55 weeks, that will leave a very negative kind of feedback. And when I started at Integra as even Cardinal Health and the medicines company outside of the US, which were no kind of people, I made sure that whoever applied for a sales, a marketeer, quality type of role, I picked up the phone and talked to them, even if they were not accepted, because they would have such a negative impact if I've never gotten back to them or responded with a blah, blah, blah type of email, which will leave not even them applying for any position that we later on have, even if we have a great name.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've made some very good, business relationships, or I could build some very good business relationships exactly from that. Yeah, just from not sending out generic thank you, but thank you emails, but picking up the phone, discussing why they didn't get the job, and
Correct.
because
Correct.
if we present people, there's always a reason why we present them, and
Yes.
so I see the value. I see the value that they would bring to the organization.
Right.
Um, Unfortunately, there's always only one who can be picked, but
Correct.
there's very often a second chance. There are, other opportunities, and so
You always
it's
see each other twice or three times, and you would like to make
exactly.
a decent, empathetic, good working relation impression on candidates, because if you meet them for the second times and you have somebody insulted them at a certain degree, even though that you never really wanted that, they will remember you. But they will remember
Absolutely.
you for the very positive stuff.
Yeah.
And that's
And
much more important than anything else.
exactly. Exactly. Thank you for that answer. Um, Christian, do you also see, I mean, if we look at the global economics,
Right.
what's happening, you're working for a US company, um, in terms of what might happening with the election there. Do you see that we are turning away a bit from the globalized world as we knew it? And from an HR perspective, um, does that already have an influence on your, if you see it, does it have an influence on the HR strategy?
I would see it from a different angle. When I had maybe 4 or 5 years in my career, let's say 2001, 2002. Oh, the world came up or was mentioned. Oh, we have to be a truly global company. Okay, so what does this one mean? Oh, we have always global processes and global providers and global this, global this, global that, which in all fairness had no meaning whatsoever for Italy, for China, for Japan, for Australia. It was the same thing with, oh, that we're going to get a global HR system or global SAP type of people fluent system or PeopleSoft or whatever the names were, Oracle. Well, if they had not really understood that the kind of user language needs to be very different. And you need to respect that Chinese language is very different from any kind of other language, and you just don't even put it in there. Why would you believe that there is an employee kind of self-service being done? Because if they can't even read it, they can't even put their name in there in that kind of regards. Or like our Germanic or the Dutch language, we have the words with the O with the two dots on top and everything else.
Yeah.
You were not able to put it in there. How embarrassing is that if you have an email that doesn't write your name in the way that the name is actually written in your passport?
Right.
That was the globalization kind of piece. Then
Yeah.
came the more globalization a couple of years later, meaning, oh, we need some global processes, that's fine. Some global system, that's okay, but we need to localize them, which is the absolute right approach. So for me, it swings from the globalized to the glocalized, and then, oh, everything is going to be localized again, which is, by the way, the wrong kind of approach. I am truly in favor of the glocalization, which I
Yeah.
now see happening through this worldwide, whatever goes on with wars here, wars there, and everything else. You adapt very strongly to the globalization. And that's what I have seen in the HR world happening. Yes, if a company, and let's call it 50,000 employees, and only 3.5 of those 50,000 employees are outside of the headquarters based in the US, you will not always lose, but you will lose when you are more internationally residing. Though a company, let's call it an Abbott. I use Abbott as an example, or a Medtronic, or whatever
Yeah.
those kind of large scales are. They have their revenues 30% in the US, 30% within EMEA, 30% in Asia Pacific, which means that they need to be truly globalized. And there the word of a German head has more impact than the German head has in a company that had only 5% of the revenues outside of the US.
Yeah.
And I saw that with Cardinal Health that I worked for. It's $133 billion US company based out Columbus, Ohio. And when I joined them, we had 0.3% of that revenue outside of the US. Yes, we grew dramatically, but that meant we had only 10% of that 133 billion, which still is great if you look at the numbers, but not great if you look at 133 billion. Well, we were second in line for all the decision making, which I can understand CEO wise. Well, if you change that, you have impact for the US. That could theoretically mean loss of revenues here and this, and that. I could go for that, but it's the way on how you communicate that. You need to have the decency to say, look, I understand where you're coming from. I see that, and I fully agree, though this is the rationale, but currently it might not be feasible to do that. But I give you all the rights to do it differently for your region, as long as it aligns with our values, our strategy, and core beliefs. That never really happened.
No. Yeah, you're right. I agree. And Christian, do you also see a tendency among the workforce? You mentioned that you had the itch, to move around. I'm the same way. I said it a couple of times now. But I noticed that these days, lots of employees are reluctant to move. I see there's lots more. I can't really put a finger on it. What's the reason? Is it the insecurity? Is it just a different generation? But I miss this itch. Yeah, I miss this flexibility when interviewing lots of people, especially the younger people.
Well, you might not be. You're the same somewhat-ish decade that I have.
Yeah.
Well, if you look into your friends, we didn't really have many of them being willing to relocate at the moment that they had a family.
Right.
There's a very difference between if you're single or if you're in a partnership and the partner has that kind of same lifestyle. Oh, you will definitely move because you wouldn't want to explore whatever it's going to be. But the moment you have children and they are settled, it's hard.
Then it's tricky.
We assess that in all the companies that I worked for during the talent management process. So if you are a theoretical, whatever category we call it, high potential functional, high potential general management, and hypo is on the lower kind of level, you ask them about, are you willing to relocate? And why they're not willing to relocate, or if they are, where? And you can put it into, okay, maybe the next country over here, but not truly over here, which is okay. But the moment that we have a position open, we go to the database and look through this angle of who of the talent could theoretically and is willing to move. And then we approach the person, not to force the person to move.
Yeah.
So as long as an education happens to every talent, meaning every employee in the organization, talent is for me every employee. You as the company need to absolutely find out what they're talented in, and you need to develop that. So therefore, if I've given to all the talent the advice that, look, if you don't tell us what you want to have as the next step, we will make a decision for you. And that might not always be the right one. But if we know, if you are the owner of your own career, then we can support you. That means a lot of employee engagement, and they would not truly leave the company unless that we have dramatically changed our values, and they might not be in link with that. But why is a company, and that's what I call in the HR world as well to a certain degree, why do we keep all the employees, the talent of the company, low? Why doesn't the HR side of things is focused on diversity inclusion, which doesn't mean for me male, female ethnicity. It means for me there's a sales team and all the salespeople have this and this type of education. Why don't you bring someone with philosophy in there, or with theology in there, or with this kind of background? And if they are all somewhat-ish around the 35 years average bracket, well, you bring someone in who is freshly from university, or you bring someone in who is 63. it's
Yeah.
the mixture of views, and the one could be doing this, the one could be doing that, and there's going to be making maybe at the beginning, ooh, how am I going to be? But people are clever; they will find it out.
Yeah. Are you living this already within your organization?
I've lived this one with the medicines company, absolutely.
Okay. Okay.
I didn't live this one with Cardinal Health to the fullest extent, but yes, at Integra. So this is kind of side story. When I joined about 7 years back, my CHRO, who has hired me together with the chief financial officer, she proclaimed diversity inclusion, which they had to report in their annual reports, as we are US based stock trade based. And she wanted to have reports on male, female leadership positions, managerial type of roles. And I talked to her on the phone in my weekly calls. Well, don't you think that's a little bit 1990s? And she said, well, Christian, if you can look at this company, we have 10% of female leaders, and we need to start with something. And we need to have the right education for the top leaders to truly understand its value. And we need to start with the most obvious, which is male, female, and then ethnicity, and then the next steps. And then I just told her, I come from the viewpoint that if you have the right panel of interviewers, if you have the right recruiters in the background who also have different diversity and ethnicity background, you will get the full array bouquet of flowers to pick the right person, irrespectively of whatever ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, whatever it is. You make sure what the right fit is. You say, look, Krista, we are a long way from that. So over the last couple of years, we came a long way, and I select my recruitment team and my external recruitment partners purely based on their knowledge, yes, but also on what are they offering me in terms of the search team or the recruiter, him or herself. Because when I just see once again, within 2 days, for an executive position, a short list of 100 people on that, which are purely male. And no one of them even lives within Asia Pacific, and they all live within the UK. I will never get back to this recruiter. Never, ever in my whole lifetime.
Right. Yeah.
But if the headhunter says, give us 3 or 4 weeks time, it might be a little bit longer than you might be used from the others, but it will get you the right kind of shortlist, which means 8 people, 10 people, 5 people, and you will like all of them. And I've learned over the last couple of years that when I go to those, I get the absolute outstanding shortlist, irrespectively of diversity and inclusion, being looked at purely, and we could have taken every single person.
Yeah. Sometimes it just takes time. Yeah, it sometimes exactly. It just takes a little bit more time. Yeah. And but it's there. It's possible. Absolutely.
Yeah. And that is for me, if I put the link back to, yes, a lot of companies have the tendencies to have their own centers of excellence for talent acquisition, and they have their schedulers and their research, everything else. Well, certain positions, a company will never, ever be able to find the 2 eyes amongst the one-eyed. They will find the one-eyed amongst the blind, and you pick the one-eyed, which is not suitable for the future of any company. But if you invest a certain amount of money to go external, you get those 2 eyes amongst those 2 eyes, and you will pick the person who actually wants your job. And no one should be afraid in terms of wanting your job. That means that the person can concentrate on something else, and he or she knows absolutely that whatever the person has been doing is in great hands.
Thank you so much for that explanation. And today, AI is one of the buzzwords we hear everywhere. And so, of course, I have to ask you, are you using AI already, and where do you see the future of AI? We, for ourselves, we use it a lot in the interviewing process. It has helped us a lot to become more efficient, but my feeling it still stays a people's business. Yeah. But how is it in your
Sure.
environment?
Since our new CEO had joined us a couple of years back, yes, he had a GE background and he has a Barco background, which is truly a technology leader across the globe, not even in the life science, but all across in media and everything else, right? And he brought into the company, we have data, we have medical devices, we produce data. Could we put them together into a database and provide that over to health insurance companies or to the government or to a group of physicians in terms of making sure that the data is really extracted and they know when a tumor is in this side and over here and over there, that a treatment path is the following, which at the same time reduces the risk of further bleeding or disturbing any kind of nerves and everything else. That's where we use a kind of emotional or the ER kind of thing in there, electronic, the typical kind of stuff really going into that kind of part. For the business side, in the more functional world, it is absolutely used in the accounting side of things.
Okay.
In the accounting things on to detect if that kind of company to be sold things to already has been in our database. And you know exactly the kind of phrases and everything else, so they don't even have to put things more into the databases. Or that kind of more technology is used for putting customers into databases.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or on the HR side, if you are searching on our website for a certain role, and you can't even found where the job posting will be, we will have a pop-up window and say, are you asking a certain question? Could we just really help you? And they use that.
Mm-hmm.
We don't use it for making a search of external candidates to their cities, because you will exclude so many people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So many people. And I've seen this one happening for a lot of other companies.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that they're reducing their potential scope by at least 40%. And within 40%, there is more than enough very qualified candidates in there. We use it also. We've implemented Workday globally in the different languages for use and everything else, right? We came from a way that experienced people told us, don't use that system, use this one, and you pick and choose this type of language. And here for the employee self-service, we have that.
Mm-hmm.
So if a new user gets in there and he or she doesn't really know how to navigate the system, you should always have those kind of separate documents to go line by line. Well, we have the voiceover in terms of telling us. Or if we have a candidate phoning our hotline for the recruitment world, he or she is detecting automatically from the database who that person actually is and responding back in their local language. That's for our employees the same thing. If we call a shared service center, which resides in not that country the person calls from, you detect which telephone number this person comes from. And when the person says the name, he or she goes into the Workday kind of front and retrieves, this person is a passport holder of in this country XYZ. So he or she responds back. We can always switch the ER person talking to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. And that for me is extremely helpful. And we've assessed this one with our employee engagement survey year over year on, do you think that's something negative? And for the first year, they said, well, we would have loved to have the HR business partner being on site and being over here in terms of passing by the office. No, that is actually working pretty well, because they got to know it from all their own personal stuff, buying something off Amazon, buying something of this and this kind of platform, and they're getting used to it. Look, certain kind of age individuals might not be truly in favor of that. So we focused on those who are more technology positively in tune to that. That's okay.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Very interesting approach. Hey, Christian, one more question I would like to ask you before we already have to come to an end.
Yeah.
Christian, where do you see the medtech is heading to, and what do you see current developments, and how does that reflect on the HR side?
Right. You had told me about that kind of topic. So I thought the last couple of days in terms of really giving a response that I could truly live with. If you have a traditional kind of med tech related business, I personally think we will see much more of heavy consolidation to purely 6 or 7 companies. And they will buy all the smaller, extremely innovative medtech devices to be included into those large ones. Well, the market entry for any other competitor to get in there is so high. And I believe that's the right thing to be done. Have those smaller companies develop their own stuff, put it out there to be sold, because the large ones have the right amount of salespeople and technology kind of into everything else to bring it to the next kind of level. That's what I truly believe. For very innovative on type of new medtech treated diseases, I want to have even more of the smaller ones. Yeah. If they have the right dedication, and if that's their only kind of treatment path that they have, they will give every single mental and time dime in terms of making that happen. And I do think that's really happening. Look on the European side of things in terms of how many medtech companies from California, from the Princeton, New Jersey region are heading over into Europe to really bring their products and their medical devices, their pharmaceuticals into the market, which is outstanding. Yeah. Over here, where I'm based in Switzerland, Zug is being one of these examples. Well, they are very low in terms of the taxation, but I will call this one the Silicon Valley of the medical device kind of industry. Small ones. Yeah. And they sit at the same canteen every single day, 60 companies that might be the size of 40, 50 people on the Zug side of things, and they do exchange. Well, the one is in, call it the diabetic sector. The other one is in rare immune disease pieces. But you have a researcher, you have a researcher, you have a physician, you have a physician, and you have a clinical trial person here and there. Well, they might not be doing the same clinical trials, but they have the same setup. And they benefit from each other. That's a bit on how I see that the Silicon Valley was somewhat formed. Yep, those absolutely. Large kind of companies weren't really large. They came from the garages, and they now became huge ones, and all the industries are going to be based there. For me, that's something that I see on the side of things over here in Zug, or for the instruments business, it's the whole Riedheim-Weilheim region in the southern part of Stuttgart. Yeah. I mean, who knows around the globe that 85% of all instruments companies are based in Riedheim-Weilheim. And they do.
That's an amazing figure. Yeah.
They are not really producing there, but they have subcontracted to all the other kind of instruments companies around the globe, small ones in India, bigger ones in China, and they put it together into the bundles. And they also sit at the same canteens.
Yeah. So it's like the bees, coming together and
yeah. Or it's the same thing with the Jura Mountains over here in Switzerland. It's the whole kind of region around close to the French border. Jura Mountains is over to Neuchâtel and Fribourg into the valley, and then gets into France. And there is a place there. 85% of the whole luxury manufacturing for watches is in that valley. And from that side of things, because you needed to have female hands and female abilities for knitting in that valley. And from there, it was born that valves needs knitting facilities as well and small female type of hands. So the medical device companies moved there for their valve production, like a J&J or an Integra or a Stryker or a Medtronic, and they all live in the same village. 80% of female work in those companies, 20% of male. 98% of female work on the production side of things. 75% live in France, and they cross the border every single day. Well, when COVID hit, there were so many traffic jams at the border between France and Switzerland, up until that the Swiss and the French decided we no longer check them because this is going to be impacting all of us. So they let everyone through, like they did it before that.
Wow, very interesting. Well, Christian, thank you so much for sharing all these insights. I would love to continue this conversation. I think we can do that later or probably in a different episode. Right. Was fantastic. Thank you so much for being here. And
thank you.
I wish you great success on your further endeavor.
Thank you for this opportunity. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.